Hey guys, welcome back to the Lit Mag Lab podcast. I'm Jazz Marie, aka Vevna Forrow. So previously on the podcast, I was going over Briet. That is spelled Briet. Again, it's a French name, and yeah, it's also a really stellar platform, named after Suzanne Briet, right? That aids in ebook distribution, off to libraries and schools. So they really help independent and small publishers. I really love, again, just before we get started here, on another submission management system, which I mentioned on this podcast. I just want to share a few additional things tied to that. So remember that the ebook marketplace, or ebooks in general, it's massive, right? Billions of dollars, right? And yeah, so I think it'd be a loss not to digitize your publications, not to have that other format, as an ebook. And yeah, there are tons of routes you could take. I'm sure most are aware of Kindle, right? And draft to digital, but Brie, right? They don't have any exclusivity. You can listen back to that episode. I was just sharing, their website, about them, a little bit from the informational guide they gave me, things like that. But yeah, so I would say, just personally, I'll share, the past couple of months, actually, or past 2 months, I actually had some personal ebook sales. And I was surprised. And I'd only digitized them this year because, my print publications had got pulled. I'm going to have to re-upload them. The only reason they got pulled is that, through the distribution system I went through, I think with Blurb, right, the Ingram network, they have to have a continuous cycle of sales to stay up. So I probably would just re-upload them and leave it on their own book, their pre-provided book marketplace, so not do the distribution on it this time. Yeah, since I have them distributed digitally as ebooks elsewhere, it's not absolutely necessary, but who knows, I may do that. I'm not sure. Yeah, but I just wanted to share, so ebooks totally are, purchased, whether you be, a self-published author, doing a print publication, or a publisher, right? I think it's absolutely a good idea to do an ebook version of your publication. So yeah, listen back to that episode again. Brie, helps, again, must say, independent and small publishers. Really cool platform they have. So we're in the process of getting, over into their marketplace in terms of our issues and chapbook publications. So it's going to be really cool. So be sure to listen back to that episode. Now, you may see here, I am on Moksha today. I know, if you've been following this podcast, I said I wasn't going to do an episode around them because their pricing is pretty high, outside of most, in terms of budgets that others have. But still, it's an awesome submission management system, so I want to do an episode around it still. Before we get going here, just a reminder, at Dippity Lit Mag, Dippity Press, right, the one I run, right, we are using Subfolio. We moved off of Submittable this year, right, back in July. And Subfolio is awesome, right? We've been given really great support by the founder, Liam Pierce, and it has a literally lot of awesome features. What you get for $29 a month, you get a lot. And yeah, I think that's awesome. So if you're curious about Subfolio, right, I just share a couple feature, episodes and talk about it. Subfolio does have a YouTube channel as well, which is really cool. So yeah, which may definitely help you on my channel, just talking about it, some of the plans, and a few individual features that really stood out to me and stuff like that. But yeah, so episode 36 did an overview. Also, I think episode 48 and, just sharing, and 71 about some of the features of Subfolio. Episode 35 was Submittable. And episode 52, Dapple, which is launched this year. And then episode 53 is Dual Suma. And episode 54 was Oleada. And yeah, and you may want to absolutely watch the comprehensive episode of all of that, right? Which would be, episode 56, right? Where I'm sharing my screen going through not just submission management systems, but also form builders, right? Alternatives to things like Google Forms, alternatives to Submittable, right? Submittable is not the only submission management system out there. So yeah, episode 15, I just did an audio talk on alternatives, but episode 56 was really where I was showing you each one that I'm aware of, in terms of what you could use to intake submissions, hundreds or thousands even, right? So be sure to watch that. I also have an article accompanying, all of those that gives the pro cons of each one and a review rating, out of my Substack. Maybe I'll link that in the description if you're curious. So yeah, let's get started here and talk about Moksha. So again, I haven't used it extensively myself. More so, I've used it as a submitter, but totally, so a couple years ago, right? I was trying to choose a submission management system, right? Getting off of Google Forms, and I looked at Moksha, right? And I was like, "Oh, this is awesome," you know. But unfortunately, the thing that really was like, "Nope, it's not going to be possible," was because of the pricing. So then I ended up, doing the CLMP membership, getting a discount on Submittable, right? $29 a month if you're with Submittable CLMP membership. Again, if you don't know what CLMP is, the Community of Lit Mags and Presses, right? You'll want to listen back to that episode I did recently, 82, on CLMP and the benefits of having that membership. Again, you receive a lot of really awesome discounts on submission management systems like Dapple, Subfolio, which we're on, and then Dual Summa and Submittable, as I mentioned. As of October 2025, Moksha does not, to my knowledge, have any CLMP discount, or any, plan, that's in a much lower range or anything like that. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, so maybe hopefully one day that happens. I don't know. I would say, if Moksha ever had a pricing plan, and I'll go through the typical overview, right? The plans and some of the features, right? So you see here the monthly plan, right? It looks like this is the tier one plan. Um, and you can see my screen again out on YouTube, Spotify, and elsewhere. $75 a month, up to 3 publications, up to 6 submission types, permanent archive, use only the months you need. You can pause it at any time, and it's fully featured. That's awesome. I think, again, it's just the pricing. I did my review based on features, flexibility, and plans. Affordability, I think, is so important. I think that's outside of most lit mags and presses, range $75 a month. So yeah, it's really really tight. The budgets we have as small presses, as lit mags and journals. Now, $75 a month for some may be reasonable, right? You get up to 3 publications, up to 6 submission types, a permanent archive. I think that's nice. Other, and it's fully featured. So other submission management systems I've shared on this podcast, right? They're not like that, right? And yeah, so I think in terms of the structure of it, Moksha has absolutely, the basic features you need to stay organized, to really do that. I'm going to show you some example pages here of a landing page, right, of Moksha. So this is from Heartline Spec. You can see they're an online speculative magazine focused on long-term friendships and relationships. I don't know if they're what their submission windows are or the status of them. This was just a page I stumbled across the other day. So this is what it sort of looks like if a place is closed for submissions using Moksha, right? So you can see they have a poetry call, then they have a little bit of details, and it shows currently closed and short fiction, right? And yeah, so this is what it looks like, right? And that's cool. So let me show you one that is open. Strange Horizons. I think I actually have submitted to Strange Horizons in the past. Check them out, by the way. I won't go through their website or anything on this episode, but this is just an example of what a submission details form looks like, right, on Moksha. Right, you can see the cover letter, the file submission, right, name, email, submission title, word count, file submission, cover letter. So yeah, pretty standard, and it's easy, right, and it's a fairly user friendly, absolutely, both for submitters and I think editors. I haven't used it long term or anything like that myself, but you can see on the right hand side of my screen, right, it has articles, right, that they've recently updated, or perhaps so there's sending bulk emails, custom submission columns, bulk updating tags. There's AI blocking, filtering, and tagging, hotkeys, author comments. There's articles on adding legal names to submissions, new submission notifications, automatic forwarding, change subdomain name. So it's packed with a lot of features. They do have documentation, which I'll show you in a little bit here, but yeah, so they also have a biannual plan, which is $415 biannually. Again, with that plan, or if it converts out, I think, to $69 a month, but it's a biannual plan, right? So $415 is a lot, right? Up to 6 publication types, up to 10 submission types, permanent archive, pause anytime, fully featured. Annual plan, right? $63 a month, $750 annually, unlimited publications, unlimited submission types, permanent archive, pause anytime, fully featured, and they give 2 months free on that. So yeah, that is pretty high. I'd say still. With Subfolio, right? Our monthly bill again is $29 a month. We get a lot of key features, even more features than that. I've covered in my pros cons list, so I won't go through all of that again because it would be a very long episode. I will plug that in the description, and you can see my reviews and thoughts. But yeah, so our bill, even with Submittable, right, or any place that's $29 a month, again with the CLMP membership discount, not every place has that $29 a month. It's different, right? But I'm saying in the case of just Submittable, with the CLMP membership, for us it was $29 a month on the most basic plan, and then Subfolio also has a $29 a month plan, right? For the publishers. They also have a lower plan than that, even, right? I think it's $10 a month, if I recall, which has some stripped back features. It's more, I think that's more so if you're solo, right? You don't have a reading team or anything. Yeah. But anyways, so yeah, $348 is what our bill is with Subfolio, right? And that's how much it was a year with a Submittable too. A year, three around slightly under $400. So yeah, we're saving a lot of money, using Subfolio, and we're still able to manage and track submissions and organize everything. It's I think awesome. Think about what you could do with the several $100s, right, towards your publication. Every bit helps. So I think Moksha at this time is just a little bit too pricey. Absolutely, it has a lot of really awesome features, but I think the pricing is what really made me not choose it several years ago. Before Subfolio's existence, and so that's why I had gone with Submittable, right? $29 a month on CLMP's membership discount. So yeah, and then yeah, so I think Subfolio is really offers a lot more, right? There aren't as limitations, right? We have, we can have unlimited buckets, unlimited bucket categories, submissions we want to have. I think it is nice though that they let you have on Moksha up to 3 publications. I know that with most submission man systems, if you have another publication, you have to, have a separate or additional account. They charge for that, right? However, you can what we do and some other places do. They use one submission management system for all their calls. If it's a lit mag and press, I mean combined. Some lit mags and presses, they separate out those two, and then they get charged for an additional account. But you could have everything under one, all of your calls under one, because it's under the same umbrella. So mostly I'm saying, like, if you have separate publications, completely different names, completely different, right? That you're running. I know some editors run two different types of publications, completely different names, right? And they don't necessarily use the same submission management system set up for that. An example would be on this podcast, right? Only Poems, right? They use Submittable, right, as of currently 2025, right? It's October, right, for intaking submissions. But they also, the founders of that, have created recently Strange Pilgrims, which I shared in this podcast. If you look back at that episode, Only Poems, right, a couple episodes back, they were using Tally, which is also Form Builder. I would say that's a step up from Google Forms. So they had that. But yeah, in some cases, with like Subfolio or other submission management systems, right, you totally could get an additional publication account. The setup and structure and charging around that is different for each place, or I mean the pricing around that. But yeah, or you could do what we do, right? Dippy Lit Mind Press. We just typically, even when we were back on Submittable, we had everything, just under one Submittable account, all of our chat book calls, all of our lit mag, issue calls, right? To save money, right? Because it doesn't really make sense, I think, since, with our budget, to really separate those out. Yes, it would be nice to have separate publications like that, Dippity Lit Mag, Dippity Press. Maybe one day we could do that if the budget allows, but I think, it'd be doubling our bill, right, with our submission man system. So yeah. Anyways, so yeah, that's Moksha. If we go to the homepage, you can see some screenshots of it. I typically just, cover plans on these overview episodes and just my thoughts. So again, you typically can find a lot more reading documentation. Some of these submission management systems have some tutorial videos even outside of this. So I'm not sure about I'm not sure about Moksha in terms of that, but I've read quite a bit of their documentation. A lot of places do use Moksha, though. Absolutely, I've seen strangely a lot of fiction places use Moksha. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe that's just something I noticed. But sci-fi places, I've come across multiple that use Moksha, and yeah, so that's awesome. Strange Horizons, tons of publishers, really fairly large, do use Moksha. It is a good submission man system. I'm not saying that at all. I think if they ever were to create again a pricing plan that was like within the $30 to $40 range or something much lower, or even a CLMP membership discount, that would be great if we could, that would be possible for Moksha one day. But as of now, that's not, how it's structured, right? They just have that basic $75 a month plan. And it's not basic. I'm saying that's like their the first tier plan they have. It has a lot of features, a lot of really awesome ones, and here you can see in the screenshot, right? So this is what I really like, this rating, a lot of lit magazine journals use a score of 1 to 10 or some rating system with their readers. And they do have the ability, in the documentation I saw, to have this set to anonymous, where you see Edgar Allan Poe in the example, right? And I love the word count field, and you can do that on other submission management systems, enter a word count input field, the status field, right? The type of submission, the assignment, who's it's assigned to, any comments, the submission date, the last time it was updated. So that's all really useful, and you have a search, right? I think it's really tough on like things like Google Forms and all of that, right? To juggle hundreds and thousands of submissions. There's like, it becomes a mess, and you can really, again, lose track of submissions. And submitters may have a longer wait time because you're trying to find, it's like a needle in a haystack with some of those forms, form builders and stuff. Not all, but Google Forms I think is fairly limited. It's a good starter. We totally started just using Google Forms to start off, and we didn't have several hundred submissions or anything like that. Just a very small amount, so that was manageable. But I think it really helps to keep track when you're dealing with submissions all over the world or a massive amount, right? To have something like Moksha, or even one of the other ones I mentioned, right, with the CLMP membership discount, right? Again, right, Submittable, Dapple, Subfolio, Dual Summa, right? So yeah, I love that. I think, in terms of rating, that's awesome. I think Submittable for me, like the workflow setup was not user friendly when I was like trying to, figure that out. A lot of features, even on the Submittable basic plan with the CLMP membership discount, it's fairly limited. You can only have, right, 6 submission types open, and or still, yeah. And you can only have 6 buckets, I mean, open at a time. With Subfolio, right, we can have unlimited buckets, right? I love the amount of calls we're able to hold open, unlimited. And we don't get charged for adding additional readers at all. So growing the team is absolutely awesome, to be able to do that, the reading team, if we want to one day. So yeah, it's a very straightforward submission management system. I don't see it as super complex. It has a lot of really awesome features. You can see comments and things like that. Google Forms doesn't have anything really beneficial like that. It's not really easy to collaborate or to comment or to assign things at all. Through something like Google Forms. So submission management systems, I think, are really beneficial. Think about it, checking your email, and getting filtering emails, labeling emails can be really hard. Thousands and thousands of emails, it can be hard. I think you need a submission management system. I think it absolutely is important to have one. It's possible to run one without one. I'm not saying, you'd not be able to start a lit mag journal without a submission management system. I'm just saying it would be hard, right? When you get to a high volume of submissions, and, um, I think it really helps you stay on top of things. And obviously, submission management systems add additional costs, right, to your monthly expenses, right? But I think it's worth it. Yeah, so there are ones right out there I shared, right, again, that are just $29 a month, right? And I think you get a lot of really stellar options with that, right? You can add additional tips, as an option. Others can really, keep track. Submitters can keep track of their submission and really see the status of it, right? I think that's very helpful. So with emails, again, it's like a lot of mystery question marks. Like, I wonder where they are of my submission. I wonder if it's you can't see, they can't see any statuses on it, right? They just await a reply from you via email, right? That's not really that's really hard. Emails can easily get lost, wind up in spam or something, right? So yeah, so Moksha, I think, has a really cool system too. It's good, rating system, right? And I think it's very very straightforward, again, not complex at all. So any system you use, it takes some time to get the hang of. And yeah, so this October again, so I don't think I wasn't going to do another episode on Dabble. I may, but I did a trial of that submission management system, which I shared a while back. And yeah, it has a lot of key features, again, that you need, right? Messaging submitters, assigning to team members, all of that. Really great, dashboard of stats and everything. However, I think I was struggling, I don't know, a little bit with the navigation in Dapple. I think that's just because, the more you use a system, the easier that gets, right? But the vertical, right, the vertical left sidebar of it, I was hoping that that would have been on the right hand side. I don't know. Most submission man systems I've used, most of the key functions or navigation sections were always on the right hand side. So I just felt like that bar should be on the other side versus the left. And yeah, and then Dapple, I think on their least expensive plan, right, on Dapple, I think they have a 500 submission cap, and that's not bad. But then it becomes a bit higher pricing wise, and they have a CMP membership discount too. But still, it's not the most cost friendly, which I took into account to the rating, and some of the navigation and wording, which also was in my rating. However, I think it is a really great submission management system option out there. I don't think I would ever use any of the Apple's AI optional features or anything like that. A lot of a lot of others would tell you, right? It's important that human beings, right, are reading and reviewing your submissions, that they have that interaction, even with job applications, right? When, you see like, oh, they're using AI to screen my application, it's probably going to get just tossed out, right? Who knows what AI detects in the job application, screening, same thing applies to submission management systems, right? That have maybe AI assistant tools, right? Again, it's optional. It's not like switched on by default. It's optional, right, to have that with Dapple. But still, I think AI is not perfect, again. So any submission management system that has AI, right, it's like, you have to keep that in mind. AI is not perfect, so it may be, marking that or screening it, but it's not going to be have the same accuracy as a human being. And in some cases, one could argue that AI perhaps catches things or saves one time, right? Which is true, but not entirely. I love that human interaction, right, between a submitter and a human editor, right? Human to human. And yeah, so you may have seen earlier, right? I was showing you on Moksha, right? If we go back a page, so they have this AI blocking, filtering, and tagging. So Moksha, it states here, has several features to help you deal with AI generated submissions. So that's nice. Yeah. There's an option they have. I haven't used this myself, but to enable AI blocking and filtering and tagging, right, it turns on a section in the submission form asking the author to affirm whether or not they used AI, right? And yeah, so I think that's nice that they include that. Obviously, you can do this in any submittable or subfolio, right? You could add a checkbox, which I've seen others say, I verified that this is created by me and that I did not use AI, right? Things like that. So some submission management systems, I see others have a checkbox, or what most lit mags and journals do, they just have in their guidelines, saying we do not accept AI submissions. Any ones that we discover are or get sent to us will be automatically or instantaneously declined. So yeah. Um, so yeah, tagging is really important, things like that. So I think it's beneficial, right, that they have that. So it's nice, right? Typically I've seen, others just create additional check boxes for that, just to remind others, to keep that in mind. Yeah. There's anonymous, setups. You can do blind reading with most submission man systems I've come into contact with, right? That I've covered in this podcast. Not all, but most. So yeah, you can listen back to those episodes I mentioned earlier. Don't forget, I'd highly recommend that. Their documentation's really detailed and useful. I really like that. So yeah, a lot of really cool features I was reading about. I'm not going to cover all of them. It would be several hours long, but really cool. The submission columns display, right? Editing, bulk updating tags, right? All of that. Yeah. They have some keyboard shortcuts even, so you can see there are pages on, all their features and documentation, how to do things, right? And, submission notifications. So that's the great thing about submission man systems, right? You can get notifications centrally and things like that, right? Yeah. And they have other features that I haven't, really played around with a bunch. But, tagging I think is really important. I'm not sure how many of you guys ever, tag or label things, but I do a lot. I really like any system that has tagging and labeling, and, archival is important, and yeah, and sending acceptance emails, and yeah, I love places that have color coding. So Submittable had like little boxes for color coding, and also Subfolio has tagging, which can be color coded, which is really nice. And yeah, so I like that they have a highlight color on submissions on the submission list, which is nice. You can control in Moksha the submission type colors in the author and reader displays, so that's really cool. Yeah, I love places that let you have a little bit of customization. You can sort, the order of publication submission types, filter, right? You get daily activity summary emails, so that's awesome. you know, with Submittable, we didn't get that at all. We just got like, you know, I would get emails on all submissions that would come through, like notifications, right? And yeah, so I like with Subfolio, we actually have summary emails that come to us when, we have new assignments, our readers get them too. And yeah, so we get alerted on that, right? So I think that's nice. And more features are being added to Subfolio. It's fairly new again, and I think it's really awesome. But yeah, any place that has, activity summary emails, I think that's really beneficial to stay on top of, incoming submissions, and, how many new submissions have come in, how many are waiting for you to review, things like that, right? I think that's awesome. And yeah, and then they have language support. So Moksha currently supports the following user-facing submission forms. So it says it has the ability to display submission forms in different languages, which is cool. English, Spanish, and Arabic. So that's cool. I think Duo Suma, I mentioned this podcast, I think it's just strictly in English, right? And yeah, if I recall. And then other submission answers I've covered are predominantly in English. So it's nice that they have that option, for others. And yeah, so I don't see that from a lot of submission man systems. So I think that's cool. Yeah. And yeah, there's a way to reset, submission ratings and things like that and calculations. So that's really cool, bulk rejections, things like that. And yeah, I personally don't use bulk rejections a lot myself. I like individually, customizing and doing those letters out to writers. Unless it's, with submissions that absolutely did follow the guidelines, or, have not moved on to, our rounds, if they're caught in the first round, right, where perhaps they were disqualified for not following the guidelines or submitting something irrelevant, than just a standard, letter, right, in terms of decline. But yeah, I really like places that let you customize, your acceptance and rejection letters out to submitters. So yeah, I think that's really important. So, just sharing. But yeah, so I don't really use bulk rejections a bunch. Never have, myself. But yeah, that might be useful for you, yeah. Creating and editing tags. Yeah, so that's awesome. Love tags. I think tags rock, guys. So Submittable has tags, Subfolio has tags, Moksha and Dapple, right, has tag capabilities. The color coding, again, love that. I'm someone who likes color coding things. And yeah, so I'm not gonna go through all of the features on here, but you can see there are tons of pages. Yeah, you could browse through. I think reading the documentation, browsing through helps, but some submission command systems absolutely do have YouTube channels and videos you can watch, like Subfolio does, even Submittable, if you're curious. But yeah, they do have a 14-day trial, for Moksha, right? 2 weeks free as of, October 2025. And yeah, so it says bring peace to your slush pile hill. Absolutely, right? So for those who are aware, most nickname the queue, right, of all submissions, the slush pile. And yeah. I think Moksha, again, that name itself means like a life cycle of rebirth. I could be wrong. I'm sorry if I'm wrong, like the name meaning. I like learning name origins. I think I looked it up once. So others can even advertise on Moksha, and I'm sure. Well, I'm not sure what the cost is to do that, but that's interesting. I haven't seen other submission man systems really offer that, so that's cool. There is a lot of traffic that goes through Moksha and other submission man systems, so that's a really cool. That they do that. I think there's some sort of fee, right? Ad sizes and stuff, so that's cool. It's expensive. Sustaining a submission man system, so yeah, of course there's going to be some cost to lit mags and presses using it. I think, again, I hope one day this pricing or monthly plan changes one day with them, but it looks like it's been this way for quite some time, since the past couple of years. $75 a month, right? And yeah, on the this one, the initial plan you come into contact with on their page here. So yeah, they do have discounts for nonprofits though. So keep that in mind. I don't know how much of a discount that is. Again, you want to keep in mind things to take consideration becoming a nonprofit, which I covered a couple episodes back on this podcast. You want to be just mindful about some of the things I mentioned in terms of becoming a nonprofit. I don't run a nonprofit at this time, nor have applied for that status. But who knows? I was just talking about the things to keep in mind, the risk associated with that. Like penalties, right? If you don't are not in compliance with your nonprofit status, right? Um, yeah. So that's pretty much it. I think I went through it. They have documentation, right? Privacy policy, client and history, right? So Moksha was created, it looks like, in late 2011 by so Moksha was created in late 2011, right? So they've been around, it looks like, for 14 years, right? Yeah. And after editor John Joseph Adams approached programmer Matthew Kressel about using the online submission systems Kressel had created for his work publishing and editing the speculative fiction magazine Sybil's Garage, Adams requested many features that were not in the original version, so Kressel decided to build a new system from scratch. Adams began using Moksha for his publications, including Lightspeed and Nightmare magazines, in early 2012. Yeah, so since its inception, I'm quoting this right off their website. Moksha has processed nearly 1 million unique manuscript submissions and processes many tens of thousands per month. That's awesome. So yeah, and yeah, you may recognize some of these names, that they have here, right? Strange Horizons, I shared, right? Far-Fetched Fables, Nightscape Press, Apex Book Company, 12th Planet Press, Escape Artist, The Best American Science Fiction and Fantasy, the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, Tor.com, dozens of others, as they state. So that's really cool. Yeah, when it was founded, and it's been around for quite some time. So it's, yeah, by all means, it is a really good submission man system, I'd say, in terms of like meeting basic needs. Others have commented on that article I did, and they said the same thing. So I think if they adjust the pricing, I think it would be really, really great. I think more lit magazine journals would use it, because I think the pricing is just a little too high outside of my range. But yeah. And I don't think they have a discover page, like Submittable I showed you on that episode, right? Or Subfolio's episode. And Duo Suma has a discover page as well. They just, I think, have this, and I could be wrong, maybe, I think it's just this list page they have, of all the publications, that are using Moksha. It's a long list, guys. Look at this. Absolutely. Yeah, of open publications, right? So these are ones that are currently open, not at all, that are, maybe all the places using Moksha, but currently open publications, right? And yeah, so I think they have to, I don't know if they have to manually update this list, or, So some of these may or may not be currently open. I don't know if it's like instantly updated, or it takes a while to update these. Let's see. So yeah, this one's currently closed for submission. So that's what's great, I think, about a Discover page, right? With the Discover page, publications are found there that have, just open statuses, right? So when we click on an embeddable list link like this, right, it's showing, publications that are, when you click in, you're like, oh, it's actually closed. It's not open, right? As you saw with Android Press, right? So temporary closed, currently closed. So yeah, so just keep that in mind. That's why I like Discover pages like Subfolio has, right? And Submittable, right? Most of you are aware of that, and Duosuma. You can easily find open call windows, publications, filter by type. So maybe one day Moksha will develop a Discover page. I think that'd be really beneficial if they have one. Even Dapple, I think it'd be nice if they had a Discover page. It really centralizes publications. Others can find more that way. There's a lot of traffic that goes through Discover pages. So yeah, if you don't know what a Discover pages look like, I will show you one in a bit here. But yeah, so yeah, just keep that in mind. This is a great page to find more publications to submit to, though. Absolutely, I check out a lot of Discover pages, though. This is just a list page, but still great that they did this. Yeah, so maybe one day they'll get a Discover page of some kind of Moksha. But I think I think it's still a really stellar submission management system. A lot of places do use it. I see a lot of fiction places, sci-fi places use it for sure. And I haven't had any sci-fi acceptances, guys. I haven't. I took a break from submitting from time to time, but once in a blue moon I do try. But yeah, I don't have any sci-fi acceptances. I did write a lot of sci-fi, over the years when I was younger. I actually should try writing it again. Thinking about it. So maybe you'll see me. I'll share if I ever do get a sci-fi please place somewhere, guys. But yeah. Anyways, Moksha, that's Moksha. I think it's awesome. So yeah, let me show you what I mean by Discover pages if you're not familiar with what I'm saying. So yeah, this is Subfolio again. The Discover page here. If I click on it, you can see, guys, the open calls, right? And there we are, WB Lit Mag, right? Other places have joined. Yeah, you can see. So yeah, these are open calls right now, right? And you can see submission calls. Others can filter by a tag like poetry, a deadline, no fee, and that's really nice. So I like Discover pages. Submittable has one too. It looks like this, right? Just an example. And yeah, you just want to be mindful. Again, in the Submittable episode I shared, right? When you toggle no fee, it doesn't necessarily, as of 2025, still mean no fee. When you drill into some of those forms, or the submittable pages of some of those publishers, sometimes they have some I don't know, some setups that aren't, fee free. So just be mindful about that. You want to be very careful about that. Really drill into the form to see, there are no fees, to verify that, right? I've covered on this podcast again how to find fee free opportunities and really do that. Obviously, Discover pages can help you, right? But yeah, and there are other ways, to really find fee opportunities, right? Chill subs search database, right? Totally I've covered, right? So check out, again, I think that was the fee free, finding fee free opportunities was episode 51. So where I said, the question, should I be paying reading fees for submissions? Are they a scam? Find free lit mags, right? So watch that episode back, episode 51. It may certainly help you. I was covering again how you can find fee-free submission opportunities. I went over things like the CLMP directory of publishers, the Poets and Writers magazine directory, Duotrope, right, and Discover pages, right, and submittable and submission grinder, right, and yeah, so yeah, these are Discover pages. Duosuma, this is their Discover opportunities page, which is very useful, and they have a calendar view. So I like things like this, right? I think this would be nice if Moksha ever developed something like that. It would really help, I think. So yeah, I just wanted to show examples of some form fields and what some of the Moksha pages may look like, and yeah, again, yeah, it's not a bad submission management system at all. I'm not saying that. It's great, actually. I think just again in terms of affordability and it still has, every submission management system has pros and cons, limitations to it. What I like about a submission management system may not necessarily what you like about it, but for the most part, I tried to, in the article, I'll plug it in the link description below, cover, what I really love about submission man systems, the ones I covered, and the things that were, kind of like, I wish this would change, So I don't have a lot of experience with Moksha. Again, I haven't used it for several years or anything like that, but I did look at it. So just note that, several years ago, right, back when I was choosing a submission man system, again, I would say I was very close to selecting and going forward with Moksha. But then I saw the cost and I was calculating, bills and stuff. I was like, no, we're not going to be able to cover that, $75 a month. So, and most I could do was like 29 bucks a month, right? So, yeah, so we ended up going, with Submittable, right, on CLMP's membership discount. And, a little over 2 years after that, I moved to Subfolio. And I really have been happy with Subfolio again. Do check it out. There are, I believe, other lit magazine journals and presses that are going to be joining. It'll gradually grow. And then more traffic will be here on the submission page. I think the main thing I noticed when we moved from Submittable to Subfolio was that our submission traffic changed and dipped quite a bit. Just keep in mind, a lot of places do use Submittable still to the day. And I think over time that's going to change. There are some new submission man systems being created, still in the future, probably, that will come to light. There are more submission man systems in existence now, right? Subfolio, Dapple. I'm sure more will be created in existence. But yeah, a lot of traffic goes through this discover opportunities page in Submittable. So whenever we would have a call, right, others would see it, the deadline or one's closing, about to close. So we lost a lot of that traffic, with our move, but I think it was worth it. So it's going to take time to build that back up, yeah. But it's very simple for submitters to create an account, and things like that. And yeah, I think Subfolio is going to continue to grow. And some of the other submission man systems I've shared, right? Some have been around a very long time, some haven't. Some are just starting this year, like Subfolio and Dapple, right? So keep that in mind. Again, I think Subfolio has some really great moderation features, and love the messaging, capabilities. Again, it feels like a Discord or chat. I think Dapple has some great messaging features too, akin to that. But yeah, I'm really happy with Subfolio. There's no like AI assistant tool or anything like that with it or anything. I think Submittable has an AI assistant grant builder form tool of some kind, but I would never use those. Again, so yeah, again, check out the pros and cons list I made. I just wanted to do an episode, focusing on Moksha though. So, I didn't show you the system and stuff. You really have to try submission man systems out to get a feel for it, because, just watching it, it's not enough. You have to really dig in, do a trial of it, right? So yeah, totally, do a trial of Moksha, or 2-week trial if you'd like. Do trials of the other ones I mentioned, right? Listen back to those other podcasts. Do check out episode 56 again, where I was doing a coverage on the submission management systems, like collectively. Episode 56, which submission management systems would I recommend for lit mags and presses? So yeah, I would say a lot of places use Moksha today. It's not, again, it's good. So don't count it out, of your selections, but just know that for my preference, would be Subfolio. I've been very happy with it thus far, and I know fellow editors have as well, who have recently joined it, this year. So check it out, But others have told me in comments and other places that Moksha has a very, great foundational submission man system, right? It's a very solid submission man system, right? You can organize things, filter, tag, all of that, right? So a lot of really key features, right? It's a way better, way better than just using email and forms. And I'm not saying you can't just use email. There are a lot of places that have gone for several years, without using any submission management systems, right? Or some places have built their own submission man system, like a custom one themselves. But yeah, there are, again, some free alternatives out there, free submission man systems I covered on this podcast. But again, some of them are quite limited, in terms of capabilities to date, right? As I shared, right? So just keep that in mind. I've shared on the podcast, right? One story submission manager. I've shared Oleada, which was one of the first submission management systems we used at Diplomat Mag, right? before Submittable, but and we had used Oleata very briefly. And yeah, that was a step up from Google Forms, Oleata, right? But yeah, it just had a lot of limitations in terms of like being able to collaborate with team members, messaging, and I'm still resorting to using email from time to time, to do things in terms of publications and all of that and messaging submitters. So yeah. Anyways, check it out. I heard Oleata might be, maybe integrating further with Asters and books. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but um, yeah, in some way or form. But anyways, maybe features will be added to it one day. But yeah, it's still some places still use Oleata too. And Oleata is free. One story submission manager. It probably is. Takes some the setup isn't just as simple as logging in, right? I don't think so. There is, I think, some additional setup you have to do with one story submission manager, as I was reading. But yeah, so there are a lot of free options out there, form builders too, or very low cost. Subfolio, submittable, and Duosuma even is not too bad cost wise. I think they're very cost friendly. Dapple is a little bit on the higher and not too bad. I think they have a plan. I think I shared right 500 submission cap on one of them, and then a plan up was like 1,000 submissions, right, or something like that. So or they have enterprise plans for larger organizations or submission volume, and you do get a CLMP discount with that, right? So yeah, as of currently, there's no CLMP discount, with CLMP with Moksha, so that's a thing. I think they do have nonprofit discounts. I'm not sure how much those are though with Moksha per their website, but yeah. So I hope this episode helped you. It's just a very basic overview episode, talking about the plans, just browsing a little bit the features. So you really have to try it yourself a bit further. So really do like it though. I think they have a great design, of their submission management system, and it's very organized and simple, straightforward. I don't like things that are super complicated or hard to grasp. So I don't think it's like that at all. I know everyone has different opinions and reviews, but yeah, for the most part, I think Subfolio was very easy to use and navigate and to set up, and migrate to this year. Moksha, I think it's not, it doesn't look complicated at all. I don't think you'd have trouble with that. In terms of Dapple, when I did a trial of it, it was some of the navigational elements I was having a little bit of a tough time with, in terms of like the vertical navigation, which was on the right hand side, and just trying to find things. But with any new system you use, it's going to take time to remember where things are located, of course, right? Yeah, so obviously you want something very simple that you can get up and going fairly quickly, right? So that's, an easy to use for both you and your reading team if you have one, and submitters, right? That and has reliable support. So I think we've absolutely seen that with Subfolio. There is to date no customer support team around Subfolio yet, but Liam Pierce, the founder of it, has been very helpful. Moksha, I don't know whether they have a customer support team, to my knowledge, but they have some reviews and things like that. I don't know what do they have under contact here. Let's see. So yeah, so again, it was designed and implemented by Matthew Kressel, and he was a writer, former editor, freelance full stack developer. So yeah, this is to contact a developer. So he has a contact page. So I'm not sure what their customer support options are. I can't remember exactly. So just keep that in mind. Yeah. Anyways, Submittable of course has a customer support team around them, and they're one of the largest, right, submission management systems in existence, right? But not the only one. So yeah, I'm sure Subfolio will develop a customer support team one day or something like that. And even Dapple, right, and things like that. The documentation is really useful. Most submission management systems are very, straightforward and pretty simple to use. I haven't seen like super complicated systems, but I think Submittable has a lot of features we didn't get to really use because we were on the, most basic, right, discounted plan with CLMP membership. And, constantly would run into, oh, you have to upgrade if you want to use this, you have to upgrade. So I like that about Subfolio, right? We have like all the key features we need, and it's very easy to use, very easy to communicate with our team. And, of course, with new systems, right, it takes time for things to be ironed out, all of that, right? So just keep that in mind. I'm sure more features will be added, right, to Subfolio, even submission management systems like Dapple, over time. And yeah, so don't forget to check out the guide I made, pros and cons, my ratings of each submission management system in existence. I haven't used every single one, that's out there, but I'm aware of some fellow founding editors and which ones they use, and just the setup of it, some of their feedback on it too. So I took that into consideration to a little bit, on ones that I wasn't super, a long term user of, myself. But yeah, so yeah, again, I haven't used every single submission management system out there in existence, very for a very long time, like several years. But just sharing my thoughts on it, so mostly I've experienced again with Oleada, Submittable, and Subfolio. And yeah, so Subfolio, do check it out. Moksha, check it out. I just want to do an episode talking about Moksha, since I hadn't, earlier. I'd mentioned it on episode 56, but hadn't really toured that much around the pages as I did in this one. Yeah, so do a trial of it. Me just talking about it, right? It's not gonna really be as beneficial as actually digging into it. Same thing with the other submission management systems. So, I think it's important to, again, as they said, have easy communication. Love that it has an capability, archival capabilities, dynamic workflows, right, and a rating system, right? One-click actions, right? Oh, that really beneficial. So yeah, this may be an option for you, or some of the other submission management systems I mentioned. Don't forget to check those out. Again, just sharing them again, right? So again, a Submittable, Subfolio, Dapple, Dual Summa, right? With those, you do have, if you join the CLMP membership, you can listen back to the episode on CLMP and everything. I think it's absolutely beneficial to do the CLMP membership to get on discounted plans, right? It saves, every bit helps to cut down costs. So yeah, I just did that episode a while ago on CLMP, not too long ago. Do check it out. It was 82. Yeah. Yeah, so you get a lot of really great benefits, and resources. Yeah. And one of those again is discounts to various platforms and services, right? And just one PS note here, guys. So I think a comment I would have on this pricing page would be beneficial, right, under fully featured or in one of these boxes, right, with beneath the plans, that it's outlined, right, in terms of all the features. Of course you could look in the documentation elsewhere. Maybe I missed it elsewhere on the site, but I think on particularly this pricing page, it'd be nice if it was an outline of all the features and everything included. Obviously it's a lot, but I think it helps to see a breakdown of that, like this a little bit, right? Something like this, an outline that summarizes all the features. Even Dapple, I think, has updated their pricing plan. This is Dapple's submission manager, right? So they've changed this, so now you can toggle. That's really helpful. So yeah, um, yeah. So now you can toggle between USD and GBP, right? And yeah, so that's really helpful. So yeah, totally look at the other ones I mentioned, right? But I think it helps to have a breakdown of this, like, a pricing grid where you can see the outline of it. That was just like my only comment, and Dual Summa has this outline here and details of all the features too. But yeah, so I don't know if that'll ever change, but I of course was able to read the documentation. You can do a trial of it, right? And see the features that way too. Yeah. So yeah, just wanted to talk about Moksha because it has a massive user base too. It's been around a very long time again. I think since 2011, right? So yeah, that's awesome. I think overall, it's really cool. So yeah, I think in the contact page again, right? The system, right, is designed and implemented by Matthew Kressel. And yeah, I think he's done a wonderful job with the design of Moksha. I think it's a very clean submission management system, and it's very helpful that it exists. Every submission man system, I think we come across things we like about them and some we don't, in terms of features. But for the most part, like with Subfolio, even Dapple, I've heard others, their feedback has been taken consideration. And over time, I'm sure Submittable, right, they have info meeting sessions, they take user feedback in. Same with Duosuma. It's important, right, that feedback from the community is taken consideration, that things are improved and ironed out. So for the most part, I don't see, I don't have a lot of negatives to say in terms of cons. I don't have a lot of cons on my list, my pros cons list for Moksha. Again, I haven't used it extensively myself. You really have to get into it to really, do that. But just from, in terms of features, the plan, what's possible, right? I base, my rating also on affordability and stuff around that. So yeah, so when you look at that, totally, I mentioned, my top, submission management systems would probably be Subfolio, Submittable and Duosuma. But, I think, again, some certainly like Dapple, they have a fairly reasonable plan. You can see here, right? There's a CLP membership discount that is possible too on top of this, right? That you could look into, right? And they, I think, can be flexible to your structure of your organization, for larger, enterprise plans too. Yeah, so there are a lot of features with Dapple, just wanted to tack that on in the PS note here. I haven't, used it long term or anything like that. I've just used the free trial, very basic and minimum there. But they do have, bulk actions there, right? On the higher tiered plans, right? And all of that. So more projects, more users, 10 users, 10 teams, 20 projects on Dapple. So yeah, to take a look at that, I won't link all the submission management systems I covered on this podcast. I just wanted to focus mostly on Moksha. So just sharing that, yeah. So take care. Yeah, do listen back to those episodes I mentioned earlier in the podcast if you're curious about these other submission management systems I've talked about, or you could just do a keyword search for them in the podcast series too. So yeah, totally. Moksha, I must say, is pretty cool too. Smash Man system. I think it has a very nice design, some really great features, but I think the pricing around the plans, is just problematic for me. So that's my only comment. And again, it's really going to come down to which submission man system you feel most comfortable on. So really take one for a test drive if you're really interested in using one or switching to one, or starting your own lit mag journal. I think it's absolutely worth it to invest in a submission management system beyond just email. And there are alternatives to Google Forms, which I covered on this podcast, right? Form builders, but I think submission management systems are really beneficial. Like Moksha, Submittable, Dapple, Subfolio, right? Yeah, and other ones I've mentioned on this podcast, One Story's Submission Manager, Oleada, even, right? There's some free ones out there. Not all of them have perhaps as many features as Submittable or, Subfolio or DAP or Moksha, but, basic, features, to intake things, organize things in one place outside of email, I think is nice. You can get, a lot of really great summary emails through most submission management systems I've used, not all. You can totally. And yeah, so yeah, I think that's all I can think of. Again, Moksha may not have a discover page, it looks like, but they have a lot of traffic, absolutely, I think, on their website, as you saw from the 2020, right, traffic stats. It was showing what, 100,000 page views, 70,000 back in 2020. I'm not sure what their page view stats are as of 2025, but yeah, most submission man systems, right, they're intaking or supporting publications that are intaking submissions from all over the world. And that traffic is really cool, especially if you're a publication that accepts international submissions. I think it's really beneficial to have that traffic. We lost, absolutely, we did lose some of our traffic after leaving Submittable's Discover page, but that's to be expected again, when you move to a new submission management system, right, that has just launched, right, like Subfolio and other ones out there, right? If you migrate to a new system, it's going to take time to build that traffic back up. However, if you have a following on social media, or if you're listed in chill subs directory, database, or even some of the other ones like poets and writers directory, right, others can find you and discover you that way. Submission grinder too, right? but a lot of traffic I've seen goes through those discover pages, right? Yeah, discover opportunities pages, so I think it's nice, Submittables discover page and Subfolio's discover page. Duo Suma has that opportunities page, open calls, and Moksha has this list. So I think, again, the traffic there is very awesome, and another way others can find you when you have those discover pages. So just want to reiterate that. Via email, again, it's totally possible, right, to establish, right, enough, traction on your publication, right, through, let's say you do social media ads, you let others know you're open, things like that. That can, of course, generate traffic to your site, for intaking submissions, or to send them in via email. But I think, getting a large volume of emails, thousands of emails, or even a form system is very, very tough to juggle. So, absolutely take in consideration, some of the things I mentioned. Look back at some of the past podcast episodes on each submission management system. The overall comprehensive episode, I think, was 56. So you can check that out. So I just wanted to cover Moksha a little bit further than I did on that episode. And yeah. So take care, guys. And yeah, have awesome days ahead. Yeah.